This is probably one of the most misconstrued aspects of fitness, and that is the differentiation between exercise and training. Today, I want to focus on what exercise is. Now, when we're talking about exercise versus training, the biggest difference is that training is essentially using your psychology and your sensations in order to push stress onto your physiology, which means the intensity or the duration that your body is able to be exposed to based off of your determination is kind of what tells it to adapt. Exercise, however, is the inversion of that. So exercise is using your physiology to change your mental or sensational state. That, in a nutshell, helps people determine what they're doing. The reason you can't train all the time is because most people have not, first and foremost, set their psychology and sensational ability up to be able to tolerate the stress on the physiology. So most people are doing exercise but thinking that it's training. They're going through the motions and expecting something different. Today was an exercise day, and so I want to walk you through kind of what it's good for. Now, there is no plan sometimes when it has to do with exercise, because the consequence that I'm looking for is I want an improved emotional or psychological state. Maybe I was under recovered. Maybe I just didn't feel like pushing into a place where I needed my physiology to adapt, or it's just good to do exercise through movement to, process things as the body moves and the muscles move. You tend to change how you feel and how you think. So that's what I use exercise for. On this day, I didn't really have a clear idea of what I wanted to do, but in the back of my head, I have movements that I don't really have to think about. They don't really risk anything as far as injury goes, and that goes generally some kind of cardiovascular machine, in this case an air bike and a step up and maybe some running. So that was on the back of my mind, but I warmed up just moving around to see what things felt like. That included some rebounding, some stretching, some third world squat, and some down dog, some cars, some hip openers and whatnot. This got me to a state that I can actually just kind of feel what I feel like doing. Now, I don't have a time duration in mind, and because I'm not trying to push stress onto the physiology, a time doesn't really matter. I don't have to finish it if I don't want to. And that is why I come back to ladders, because I know that like a 10 to 50 ladder or something like that between two movements and a little bit extra might be in the 30-minute range. And that's generally a good time to just move around without any stress. What I don't want is to be sore from this the next day or the day after, so that it would actually interfere with a time period that I would want to train. And that is kind of what I'm safeguarding against. So in this case, I start soft. I just go at a pace, and some people call zone 2, maybe it's zone 1, it doesn't really matter. The whole goal here with exercise is to find the moment when my sensational or psychological state shifts and it improves. And this is something that you can actually feel if you do this enough, when you practice this enough. And that is actually the intention that you're going for. I want to feel differently. And somewhere around probably the 20 to 25 minute mark is when I've noticed that it repeatedly happens. What else happens in this kind of exercise or this, at least this format that I'm using, is that it's a good way to kind of process your thoughts. It's a good way to process emotional states or things that you have coming up or things that you haven't had time to think about. And that's why I mostly do it kind of alone in a darker room and with very loud methodic music. So I'm going to drop the playlist. Obviously it's playing in the background already. This is just something that, a playlist that I like. I go through them all the time, but this is like one that I use often just because of the nature of the voiceovers and kind of the captures that it takes from popular cinema, and then how the beat changes along the way. One of the things that I like about using music intentionally is that you can plan the resolve, especially if you're trying to resolve your emotional or psychological state. You can use that to kind of crescendo yourself into a different state. And this is really no different. Around the 20 to 25 minute mark, the beat and tempo really change from something more kind of eerie and soundscapey into kind of a vibey beat and kind of an upbeat rhythm. And you'll notice that that can really coincide with how you feel. As this workout goes on, I am not concerned with the time. I'm not concerned with whether I'm going fast enough. And this is the trap that most people fall into. Their training deteriorates into exercise, and their exercise escalates into training, which means they're both muddled signals. I think the whole point of this, and I mention it now because a great question came up on the forum about what to do in between other training sessions, mentioning obviously because we're in the quest right now. And the answer to that is I exercise. And I wanted to put this together to show exactly what I mean by that, which is I'm not trying to incur more stress. I'm not trying to move my physiology. I'm trying to move my body to change my, temporal, emotional, or psychological state. And this is kind of what it looks like. Some people in their exercise they can have an expression of extreme fitness just because the level is so high. In this case, and because I'm deconditioned for kind of aerobic work just because of the Maskian cycle we've been on, it's not that impressive. I think on the wattage on the air bike, I'm holding something between like 288 and 300 watts or something like that, which given the nature of what I'm normally at, that's about 70 watts off. And it doesn't feel hard because that's not what I'm looking for, but that just happens to be the pacing that I like. Some days it might be lower than that. Some days it might be higher. As far as the run pace goes, I was only running like a 940 mile or something like that. It's very slow. Everything is just about moving the body until I feel different. So I thought this would be helpful for some people that maybe are confused on the concept of how we say, you can't train more than 3 times a week. This is kind of what I mean. It doesn't mean we don't move around, that we don't exercise. It just means that I'm not sending a physiological signal using my psychology in order to do it.